What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch. Sombra got her DPS rework and then a bit of a nerf in order to put her back in line. We've seen her a ton in Overwatch contenders. All of the different regions are playing her a lot. But in the Overwatch League, certain teams seem to be more effective at using her than others, making overall for my conclusion to be she's quite balanced. But I wanted to sort of dissect a few different examples of how different teams are failing to utilize her, or how the enemies are countering her, or how I think the best Sombra team, Boston Uprising, utilized her to basically to perfection. If you don't know, the Boston Uprising traditionally were a boom or bust dive team, meaning that they would run dive comp even against real strong dive counters, because in theory, if you play dive comp perfectly, you should be able to counter everything. And if you go up against one of the best defensive teams in the entire world, NYXL, and still come out on top, you're doing something right. It's actually kind of insane how they're able to put this fight back, and I think it comes down to a few principles of how a dive comp team operates in comparison to a bunker comp team, where the bunker is going to exceed at the break of the fight. So when both teams are at 6v6, the bunker comp team has a ton of cooldowns, halt, hook, flashbang, junkrat mines to burst down frags, and if they're able to get a bunch of those kills, they should be able to stabilize. However, as the fight proceeds into a more fair 3v3, and the cooldowns have been used from the bunker comp, well, then the mobility of the Boston Uprising is able to razzle-dazzle around them, and the dive comp team's Zenyatta is under much less pressure because they can stand out at a distance, pelt in damage from range, and the bunker comp team is forced to try to scramble in order to get all their resources to burst down the threats at close range. In general, this sets up a principle that Sombra, even though she's played more in the DPS role right now, I still think you should think of her as setting up the rest of your team to carry the game. Sombra rarely is the one putting up the most work. She's still more of an anti-hero, a counter-hero, than she is a carry-the-game herself type hero. With her disable and disruption, she enables Winston, Tracer, and Zenyatta to be the big playmakers in the game, as long as she gets her value off. This principle kind of plays itself out throughout this round, and the mobility is able to dodge a lot of those CC abilities NYXL try to throw at them. However, after using the EMP, they realize that they kind of need a Genji here, but overall, to be honest, I don't think Mistakes ends up doing a ton on either hero. There's just some absolutely ridiculous mobility character plays like Gamsu luring Saebyeolbe into a hallway with a Roadhog by his side, dodges the hook, kills Saebyeolbe. What is this, Gamsu? You're a madman. When the dive comp team is able to use their mobility to hardcore outplay the static comp, it's just going to be over no matter what hero you're running in that DPS slot. In comparison, though, surprisingly enough, the Florida Mayhem put up a much bigger fight in this same exact matchup on this map in the same week, so it gives us a great comparison. A quick refresher, NYXL sort of barricaded themselves into a close-range hallway, and that made it fairly easy to start trading things out and progress into a mid-fight. The bunker comp does not want to get traded out. They want to sustain as many members as possible, so that they can keep those lethal cooldowns coming back. They don't have a Tracer on their team, which is going to carry out in a 3v3 situation. They should be trying to play to full sustain. Florida Mayhem does this by taking all the map control. They can see everything. They're not hiding at all. They're out in open space so they can get their medium to long range McCree, halt hook combination working, and they're able to utterly stifle the pushes and flanks that are trying to come out from the Boston Uprising. But, spoiler alert, Boston is going to end up outplaying this with the Sombra dive, and it all comes down to being able to outposition and outflank. Interestingly enough, Saya player here is babysitting his Zenyatta. Obviously, he's going to be the target. They're looking for the aggression, and he wants to catch a flanker with a flash. Mistakes does get popped. He gets out, lures out that cooldown, and in the mess of it all, it's really hard for Florida to focus fire, whereas the mobility characters of the Sombra dive comp can focus fire because they have the mobility to get in quick to fight the same target. Whereas if Saya is flashing and failing to kill a Sombra to the left, the Winston Tracer comes in on the right, Roadhog's hooking a tank, they're all fighting different targets and they're not able to sustain and keep things alive. Really hard for the Zenyatta here. He honestly is bait, and the more he can do to hide away and avoid damage and outposition the things coming after him, the better. This time, a similar engagement to NYXL's first gambit, fighting in close. They know they have some lethal cooldowns that can kill things at close range. They do burst down a few frags, but Boston disengages, starts to give them the point, regroups themselves, and then swarms around the bunker yet again. Florida again plays this engagement quite well, just like the other ones, but Boston is on a whole nother level when it comes to outvaluing their opposition by avoiding a lot of their lethality. These pincer moves just keep coming through for Boston, attacking from 2 angles, and Florida simply can't get kills fast enough in order to keep their team alive. And as soon as it starts to trade evenly, then Boston are actually in an advantage because their characters are better for dealing with the late fight, as they can continuously dodge and sustain themselves a bit better than the other characters like McCree, who needs a bit more babysitting and his team around in order to keep him alive. Boston's really good at this, guys, but not every team is. A lot of times teams are finding themselves struggling to make use of Sombra, which leads me to believe that if you're a team that doesn't have a specialist on the character like Mistakes is, you might want to forego trying the Sombra strategies because teams really know how to counter it, and you have to play even better to outplay it once they do everything that's required to beat those stealthy engages. For example, let's take a look at Anubis. Here, Jake is trying to find the backline with his EMP, but he's going to have a bit of a struggle with the Mercy Zen defensive combo, as well as the Junkrat, who gets immense amounts of pressure and fragging potential onto Jake's team as he's trying to set up this engagement. Overall, that's how I'm going to come down on Sombra, that there's just so many other characters that are good at providing firepower that you better have a really good way to utilize the Sombra if you're going to have a chance of her getting value. Here, Jake stealthily infiltrates the backline, but all the while we have to be thinking about where his team is at and if they're even capable of following up on this engagement. Either the communication or the timing was off here. Jake EMPs most of the team, but the tanks aren't there to follow up immediately, and that makes this entire strat a waste. Now, they do end up swapping Jake back to the Jake Rat anyway to fight fire with fire, but fooling around with the Sombra there kind of just was a waste of time. The problem is, as we all know, it can feel impossible to get past that choke of Anubis. On point B, the enemy can easily just drop on you with Winston, and if your Mercy Zen can't get past the choke, there's not a whole lot of value to go kill the enemy's backline, because if your backline dies, well, they're going to respawn in 10 seconds, you have a respawn disadvantage, and you're pretty much wrecked. Like, the choke fight has to somehow outplay the defensive dive coming in to even make it worthwhile to go on an attack dive. Here's another example. Unko's able to slip away into the corner. He was ready to line of sight this EMP, and if he gets off trance, the entire EMP engage is just a waste. The value of EMP only really works under a very particular set of circumstances, so as the Sombra player, you really have to be working hard to make sure that you find worthwhile use of that ultimate. And overall, where I'm kind of landing on this is that because EMP doesn't come up every fight like it used to, the enemy just knows it's going to be coming. So they're able to outplay it quite convincingly by making sure they have their resources in the right spot, or their positioning is good so that even if they don't have their abilities, they're able to duck away. Really, the new Sombra's power is in her mid-fight hack and her ability to have sick mobility and a bit better damage than she used to. A lot of teams are actually struggling to get any value out of the EMP, even when it hits multiple targets. We don't get a great view of this one, but look at this dive attack that the Valiant set up. They're low on ults here, and they don't want the enemy to be able to confidently set up a clean engagement with their ult, so they go for an aggressive move. I love this shot call. EMP lands up top, is gonna hit the tanks, but Bunny doesn't get hit by it, and he's able to flush out the back end. And realistically, we're talking about Volskaya B. If the defending team counter engages that way and gets even a couple kills, they're just going to straight up win the fight. Realistically, after that failure of an attempt, you would think that they would have swapped the Sombra, but they stick to it, eventually get 2 ticks, and then are pushing in for their 3rd tick. Bunny again on the prowl, looking on the backside of the engagement. They pop EMP and Trance to whittle down the front line, but Kariv is safe from this. Bunny doesn't get hit. He's able to have the pick of the litter in order to find the back line, and the defending team here is in a much better situation because they are able to bait the objective the entire time. I mean, I think I've probably said this 100 times on this channel, and yet the entire Overwatch community still thinks you're supposed to go to the objective. That's the worst thing you could do, and the easiest way to allow for the defenders to outplay you by baiting the objective, luring you in, and shooting you in the back as you do so. So overall, I'm a bit more high on the defensive Sombra because you can pick your battles and have the objective on your side rather than an obligation. Whereas on attack, unless you have a really strong ult combo that's going to make use of the EMP, it isn't enough. And because Tracer is so meta right now, I don't think Tracer really gets that much value out of the tanks being down, because the whole reason why pros run Tracer is because she can outplay everything anyway. When D.Va had like 4 seconds of DM, yeah, you could say, well, D.Va's got to be the target, you hack her, all of a sudden now our Tracer's going to get a ton more value, but that's not even the case anymore. In fact, I would go one step further and say, maybe they need to start thinking about simply hacking and EMPing the enemy Tracer, because going for the tanks and going for the supports oftentimes isn't good enough. A lot of times the supports are able to get in really strong positioning to cover for each other, especially if they have that Mercy beam attached to the Zenyatta, or if they line of sight you and come out with trance or sound barrier or whatever. And I've heard a lot of cries about tank players getting really annoyed that hack is so easy to land on them. But I think, especially if you watch this footage back, if you look to see where the tank players are positioned whenever a hack comes in on them, or they know a hack's going to be coming, they just sort of scoot away from the fight. And yeah, you're minimized and silenced as a tank player. It's annoying that you don't get to go have fun and fight things, but it's such a value drain to put that DPS resource into disabling you when a tank a lot of the times is just holding space anyway. Like, think about it like this. Would you rather have a Sombra hack a tank who can sort of just scoot away and hold some point presence, absorb some healing and some damage? Or would you rather that hack land on a Tracer and kill her? Or, you know, a Junkrat Mine, McCree Flashbang, any other DPS utility that you could put in there would be more lethal than hacking the tank right now, at least from what I can tell. I know a lot of times in contenders, the hack sort of makes or breaks the fight, but I think that's because the understanding of how to outplay it with good positioning hasn't leveled up at that tier of play, whereas in the Overwatch League, teams are really strong at outplaying it, except against the Boston Uprising, who, with insane Winston and Tracer play, trying to outplay the Sombra sort of flushes them out into dying to the incredible play from Gamsu and Striker, who I'm going to say right now need to be in the conversation for top 3 in their positions. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. Sombra Pro Analysis. What are you guys thinking about this character? I hear a lot of negative things about her, that she's sort of anti-fun. I think she's not too overpowered if you know how to play against her. And overall, even though Boston is winning with her, whereas other teams I think are struggling a bit and probably shouldn't even try her, I think it comes down more so that just like back in the Lunatic High days when they put Eska on Sombra, she's the type of character that is going to give opportunities for other players on your team to shine. So it's still overall supportive in nature, even if she's in the DPS slot. And it's my opinion, at least, that most teams should probably stray away from using her, especially on attack. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please subscribe, because we upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, dank memes, Overwatch League predictions. Just went 10-2 last week, made it up for week 1 going 8-4. It's a 9-3 average week to week. Pretty proud of that. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.